Hey guys, welcome to 2021, and in this video I'm gonna walk you through what I think are gonna be the most important UI trends this year. And every one of these trends are gonna get their own separate video this year, so don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel so you'll be in the loop and you're not gonna miss this. And while Hype for Academy is still a few months away, we already launched our social channels, so you can join us on Instagram and Twitter right now. Okay, so let's start. What are the main trends that I believe are gonna be important in 2021? Okay, so number one is 3D. 3D illustrations have been popular for a while now, and they are mostly popular because they are difficult to do. But that is slowly changing with tools like Vectory or Spline coming into the market. And I think many designers should actually explore 3D because, well, it adds a new dimension to your work, that's one thing, but it also adds something that still not many people can do, which makes you instantly stand out. And with the modern web technologies, you can actually use many of these 3D objects on your websites with full interactivity, which is awesome. That's also why you don't really need to have heavily textured and very well lit objects. In many cases, just a simple flat shape of something is enough if you can manipulate it in 3D. And a great example of this is the Superlist website, which is an upcoming app from the guys that made Wunderlist, my favorite to-do app. As you can see, it doesn't really need much, because those 3D visuals with their one color look are looking really great against the background, and the way that they animate is completely enough to actually still make a stunning first impression. Okay, number two is Glassmorphism. So when I came with the name Glassmorphism in November of 2020, my goal was to unify the naming conventions, because some people just call it frosted glass effect, then Microsoft has called it acrylic in their Fluent design system. So all of those different names for what basically is the same effect. So that was the reason for my first article on Glassmorphism, and it actually exploded since then. Even up to a point where right now I'm consulting some Fortune 500 companies, and many of those higher up people in those companies actually mention Glassmorphism and that they want to try and experiment with this. People are looking at ways to make this trend work, and of course it has its own problems, and there are some accessibility issues that you need to solve if you want to use this style. But they are easy to solve because in most cases it's all about the contrast and the clarity. So just don't go too transparent and make sure that the background and the foreground contrast well enough. And if you want to play around with this, we made a handy CSS generator at glassmorphism.com that you can use right now. Number three, real life pictures. And I think the reason for that is that for a while now we had a very huge trend of illustration and isometric illustration, but it was just so similar to one another that many people started getting bored with this. Because many websites and apps started using very similar looking characters, and they all looked like from one set, and sometimes they even were. But the problem with this was that this kind of unified all the different experiences, and it's just not fresh anymore. So real life photos have the ability to actually give you a lot more emotion and a lot more connection with the brand. You just need to do them right. So we strongly believe that this year is going to be even more about high quality photos in the headers of websites and in onboarding processes of apps. And there are some great examples of this there already. And just with all the other trends, we will create a video on how to actually cut out the right photo, how to pick the right photo, how to color correct it to match the style of the product you're designing and all that. So there's gonna be a tutorial on this later this year. Number four is vivid colors. And vivid colors have been gaining attention since Instagram did their famous logo redesign. But it's not only about Instagram. Of course, vivid colors are there because our attention span is lower and lower every year. So that kind of leads us to a point where we need to be bombarded by more stimuli. And in this case, it's just more colors or more vibrancy to even pay attention to stuff. So vibrant colors are definitely gonna be in this year. Just try to make sure they're not clashing too much. Number five is blurred, colorful backgrounds. So if you want to use this trend, which is currently blowing up alongside Glassmorphism because it connects with Glassmorphism quite well, you need to be sure to blur the right image in the background. Because if you just blur something very simple, it's gonna look like a simple gradient, and that's not the point. The gradient needs to be multi-dimensional and multi-angular basically. So it needs to look like there's actually some shapes or something going on in that background. So yeah, you can try it both with Glassmorphism and also on its own, because it still makes a lot of sense and it makes all the white and black elements on these backgrounds actually pop more, so they're more visible and they're more fun to look at. Number 6, minimalism. So minimalism has never been really out of style, but at some point, I think it was like in the 2009 or 2010, many customers were asking us to just drop everything onto the design. So they wanted it all, like glossy 3D, shadows and lightning effects. So whatever they could think of, they wanted it in their design. So they wanted it to look super rich. So luckily this trend is now fully over. We're back to minimal, simple and readable websites and apps. And that's really great, especially for products that are showing some additional content. It's really good to use minimalism to actually make the content stand out instead of the interface. Just make sure you use proper white space and you use proper color and contrast cues so people are not really bored by the website. So the goal here is not to emulate an old school newspaper layout. The goal here is to make something that's clear, readable, but also people understand that it's been designed. Number 7, geometric structure. So the layouts have been going into very crazy directions with angular and rounded shapes in the backgrounds, but I think that we're gonna see a shift into more standard geometric and blocky kind of designs. And while it's similar to minimalism, it uses contrast and it uses blockiness of the objects to create a layout. And the layout is not just a repeating series of blocks, so you can actually break it down, you can have some text overlapping some images and kind of sticking out of them. So it doesn't have to be a boring structure, but it needs to be very grid heavy and it needs to follow a specific grid so we don't get lost in this. And of course, in this style, both really good typography and vibrant colors and great photos are essential to make it work. Number 8, big typography. So big typography has been with us for a while now, but it's getting more prominent in the recent years and it's gonna be one of the main design trends for landing pages in 2021. The main reason for that is once again our shorter attention spans. So we don't want to read long text. We want to be smashed in the face by 2 or 3 words that define what we're looking at. And of course, to do it right and to make the effect really work, you can't just take Roboto and just completely blow it up to fill the entire screen. So you need a font that's a lot less common, and it's best to actually pick a paid font, because many font foundries right now are going away from the previous model of paying per views and paying a premium for using the font in the app and all that. So right now you can buy awesome fonts for a flat fee and you can use them forever for all the things that you want to use them in. Number 9, Brutalism. So Brutalism is actually coming from architecture and it spawned some pretty lovely buildings in history. Yeah, who wouldn't really want to live in one of those? So this style is about being ugly on purpose. But it's not about being randomly ugly, so you can't just drop random images onto the canvas and think of this as a brutalist piece, because it still has to make some sense in terms of design. It needs to have a structure and it needs to have a flow, but it actually breaks a lot of the other rules. So contrasting colors, clashing colors, and fonts that don't sometimes match each other are a thing that can work here. And of course, just as with brutalist architecture, we don't really see many rounded corners or soft shadows here. It's all about being strong and in your face. And while this can work for an artist's portfolio or a very simple website, I would avoid using Brutalism for anything that requires you to read a lot. So news websites and blogging platforms really shouldn't use this style, because in the long run it makes the visuals disorienting and it makes what you're looking at a lot harder to read. So for any content heavy sites or apps, you should really stick with minimalism, because it's the content that matters, not the wrapper. Okay, and number 10 is not really a UI trend, but this is happening and we need to be aware of that. I believe 2021 will see a huge simplification of all the UX and UI processes that we're currently following. We will also likely lose most of the roles in the industry, because back in 2008 and 2009, when UX was the thing and it was just super popular and it was beginning to gain traction in bigger companies, it started spawning different roles. So it started by just us UX designers doing our thing, but then many people realized they can actually do their own narrow niche thing as well and call themselves user workshop facilitator or whatever. So it spawned like millions of those different narrow fields. And many of these people are designers who don't design. And while it worked for a while and many of these people thrived in the industry, I think it's coming to a close. And partially it's because of the global situation right now, but also because I think the companies are more aware of this than they were 10 years ago. So I think it's gonna go towards a designer and researcher in the industry, with each other having a little bit of overlapping knowledge. So a researcher that knows the basics of design, and then the designer who knows how they actually conduct the research and how the results are provided, because that will make it a lot easier for those two groups to communicate. So especially in small organizations, it's gonna be a UX and UI designer, and it's not gonna be two separate roles anymore. And of course there can be separate roles in bigger organizations, and especially in ones that require you to have different levels of people working on just one project, but it's not really that common anymore. And still, if you have a UX manager that oversees the entire project but had no idea about how UI works, it's not gonna be the best for the project. So which design trends are you most excited about? Are you gonna try them all? Let me know in the comments. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. And also don't forget to check out our new Instagram and Twitter pages. Cheers!